All right, welcome back, everyone. We are back. Let's do a quick sound check for everyone. I have to apologize to everyone in case the audio is back. Um, we are actually moving from our first house into another house, so my mic is not the correct mic. I don't have the setup. Everything is in box 6. We're actually in an extended stay. So let me ask everyone, can you guys hear me decently? Not the greatest, but is it decent enough to do this work today? All right, good. Well, that's excellent to hear. So I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you guys are safe. I know there's been so much going on in the world, and there's all sorts of suffering going on. I hope all of you are taking care of your loved ones. I wanted to share just some basic knowledge on how you can take care of yourself. As you know, the goal today is really about kidneys, it's about nutrition, it's about longevity, it's about overall care on simple things you can do to start taking basic steps. Basic steps. There's a general rule that says 20% of what you do has 80% impact on your overall health. So, with that, we're going to mix in questions that you guys have that you're putting in the chat, along with some research that I've put together to make sure I share with you so you get to hear about the latest and greatest on what's going on. So you'll hear some research. I'll answer your questions. With that, we got about 60 minutes together. So let's not waste any time at all. Let's dive right into it. I see D. Dutton has a question. CKD GFR is about 28 to 38. BUN is about 27. So remember, when we're talking about a GFR of about 28 to 38, the stages of kidney disease, there are essentially 5 stages. So stage 1 is considered only if you're spilling protein in the urine. Otherwise, you're essentially normal, and that's a GFR considered to be above 90. Stage 2 is GFR above 60 to 90. That is only if you have protein in the urine. Otherwise, stages 1 and 2, we don't even talk about that. Stage 3 is divided into CKD stage 3A and 3B. Stage 3A would be essentially dividing that 30 to 60 into really 45 to 60 would be stage 3A. Stage 3B would be going all the way from 30 to 45. So now you have stage 3. Stage 4 would be essentially going from 15 to 30, and stage 5 would be below 15. So here we're talking essentially about 30 to 38. So you're talking about stage 3B. BUN is about 27. All others, blood pressure, I believe FG is probably standing for fasting glucose, urine albumin, creatinine, ultrasound, CT, unremarkable. What kinds of new or less commonly used blood tests, urine analysis, or other imaging could I discuss with my nephrologist? So the first thing to know is when you have a GFR that's low, the question becomes is there scarring going on in the kidney? So you want to look at the size of the kidney going on, because if the size of the kidney is smaller than usual, typically kidneys are about 9.5, 10 centimeters. If it looks like the kidney is smaller, or if it looks like there's what we call cortical thinning, that means that there's some scarring that's present there. That can relate into the idea that there's long-term damage. Ultimately, the only real way to know if there's damage is sometimes we have to do a biopsy. The reason we don't like to do a biopsy is simply because of the fact that your kidney gets about 20% of the blood from your heart. So it's what we call a very vascular organ. That's just a fancy way of saying it gets a lot of blood. So you don't want to stick a needle in there. If your kidney is stable, the kidney function is not going down, and all you're looking to know is, why do I have this number, and everything is coming back normal, then there's no real reason to go poking around in there. What we would focus on is make sure your blood pressure is good, make sure you're exercising, make sure your sugars are good. All of those basic things, blood pressure, sugars, weight, if those things are good, and of course lipids are good, then you're in a very good place. And then we would do a blood workup to make sure all of the autoimmune things that we can check for are okay, then we would be fine. Byzantine Ladybug asks, hello everyone, first time attending. Well, that's great. Welcome so much, and I'm honored that you would join us, so thank you. Idiopathic CKD with no protein leakage. Why can the creatinine be elevated? Lots of reasons, right? One of the reasons why creatinine can be elevated is there can be scarring. And the scarring can happen because of many reasons. They can be scarring because there's damage inside the kidney. That damage can happen for a variety of reasons. For example, there's damage because of blood pressure. There's damage because there was an autoimmune disease. There's damage because there was blockage that was happening. So, unfortunately, there's no real easy way to know this. Sometimes the only way to know what the cause of damage is we have to do a biopsy to find out. And that makes it a little bit challenging because you don't want to stick a needle inside a kidney unless you're going to do something different with the results. Over the last one, so Roman B asks, over the last 6 months, I've lost about 50 pounds, but now my blood pressure is on the low side. I recently moved to a new state and can't get a new doctor until January 2nd. Should I go into a walk in clinic ER to get my blood pressure meds adjusted, or is there another option? Currently on 4 meds for blood pressure. So, Roman, remember, one of the things is now there's telephone visits you can do, even Amazon, Walmart, Target has the options for you to call, and they are very inexpensive. You definitely want to call and have somebody go through your meds with you, because sometimes when you stop a medication, it can cause your electrolytes, which are things like potassium and other electrolytes, to go in dangerous positions, either too little or too much, depending on what type of medication you are. Certain medications can cause your potassium to go very low, and those medications, when you stop them, will cause the potassium to rebound. Others are actually causing your potassium to go higher. When you stop them, could cause it to go lower. So that's why when you're going to stop it, we just want to make sure that somebody is saying, look, this medication is going to interact with this one. Because we were giving you a medication that causes you to lose potassium, we were giving you another medication that's actually a potassium supplement. In my patients, for example, sometimes I have them on one medication that's going to raise their potassium, and then I give them a different blood pressure medication that acts as a diuretic that lowers their blood pressure medication, but also is a diuretic that's getting rid of their potassium. So if they stop the first one and they don't realize that the other one specifically was acting as a diuretic, now you're creating a very dangerous situation. So you want to be aware. All right, before we go to the next question, let me go and share an interesting study with you guys, just so you're getting a benefit of all sorts of fun, interesting stuff as well. So, sotagliflozin. So, gliflozins are a class of drugs. They're called SGLT2 inhibitors. SGLT2 inhibitors stand for sodium glucose transporter inhibitors. Why are they important? Because what they essentially do is they block these sodium glucose transporters, and when they block them, you essentially pee out some sugars. But the reason they're so important in patients with kidney disease is because of the fact that they will decrease the amount of protein you're spilling in the urine, number one. They will slow down the rate of decline in your kidney disease, number two. Number three is they will improve your hemoglobin A1C or improve your diabetes. Number four, they cause weight loss. Number five, they protect your heart. And what we're finding now is there's a new sort of category emerging. So right now we have drugs like empagliflozin, which is an SGLT2 inhibitor. Now we're starting to get dual SGLT1 and 2 inhibitors. So this drug is called sotagliflozin, and the data on the study is actually being presented at this year's American Society of Nephrology Conference, which is ASN for short. It's actually happening right now in the first week of November. And this is the SCORE trial. This is a phase 3 double blind placebo controlled study. It's randomized. It has 10,000 patients, type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease. They all have cardiovascular risk factors, and they're receiving either sotagliflozin, or placebo. Now, they're following these patients out for 16 months, and essentially their endpoints were to see if their kidneys went more than 50% downhill, or they went below 15%, or they ended up on dialysis. And so essentially what they're finding is that sotagliflozin, it reduces the endpoints substantially by 38%. It also reduces the cardiorenal composite outcomes by 23%. And the cardiorenal composites means that heart or kidney related deaths by 23%. Why should you care? Because of the fact that these drugs, the SGLT2, these are very important drugs. So if you are doing the diet, if you're doing the exercise, if you're doing all of that lifestyle already, and you're looking for the next step to add on, this could be an important agent as part of the drug. In the past, the only drugs we used to talk about were the prils, like lisinopril, enalapril, or the artans, like losartan, etc. Now we have more advanced agents that can also be very, very helpful. So just an important study for you guys to have in the back of your mind. One more study before we return to all of your questions and comments in the chat. And this one comes from the Journal of Obesity in July 2023. And this is looking at the role of GLP-1s. So switching topics to talk a little bit about weight loss. Weight loss, remember, is really about making sure that we're able to control the appetite and cut calories. And when we talk about weight loss, there's all sorts of new drugs that are coming on the market. Everybody might have heard about these drugs called Ozempic, Wegovy, Manjaro. They're all over the news, and as a result, it's all the rage these days. And they play a very important role because the new studies that are coming out are showing they can be important in reducing kidney disease. They can be important in preventing heart failure. The latest studies show that they can also lower the risk of dementia, early Alzheimer's. So there's a lot of positives. On the negative side, they can cause a very scary thing, which is permanent stomach paralysis. They have a small chance of thyroid cancer. We just don't know the incidence of these things, so these are not without risk. They can increase the risk of depression or even suicide. So you have to be very careful with them. Now, the important thing about drugs like tirzepatide, which the brand name is Mounjaro, is they can have as much as 22.5 to 25% weight loss. That's substantial. So there's a meta-analysis that was published earlier this year. Meta-analysis means they looked at as many studies as they could find. They put it together, they put all the data together, and then analyzed it together. So in this case was 6 studies, 4,000 participants together, and they looked at tirzepatide, which currently the brand name is called Mounjaro, with tirzepatide 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 15 milligrams. And what they found was that with 5 milligrams, patients lost about 7.7 kilograms. 10 milligrams, they lost about 11.6 kilograms. And with 15 milligrams, they lost about 11.8 kilograms. Why should this matter to anybody with or without kidney disease? Because tirzepatide can be very powerful for weight loss. On the flip side, the importance to note is when you're talking about weight loss, the reason these drugs matter is when you start them. If you stop them, the weight does come right back. So our message is always that when you start, you always want to start with lifestyle. You want to continue with lifestyle. You want to end with lifestyle. Medicine is just a tool in your toolbox. You don't want to rely on medicines as the be all end all. You want to use medicines as just another tool. That's why it's so important. Okay, let's come back to the questions in the chat and let's see if we can continue to answer all of your questions there. Okay, and we were right here. So let's see. Byzantine looking for evidence-based health tips tonight. Absolutely. Everything that I try to present to you, I give you the research behind it, the journal behind it, and the reference. Every study that I have on my channel, also on the channel that I have with Michelle, is all based on studies. Nothing that I ever talk about is opinion based. It's always based on study. Roman, I've got a message into the doctor. So, Roman, yes, absolutely. Talk to your doctor. Never decide to start or stop a medication. It's not because I'm trying to make things difficult. It's because you always want to talk to your provider simply because of the fact that these things are so tricky when you start or stop a drug, only because of the fact that there's electrolyte changes. I'll give you a very simple example. When you think about potassium, potassium is about 3.5 to 5.5 milliequivalents is the range in terms of your blood. In your cell, it's way higher. It's over 100 going on. So if you were to have a crush injury, God forbid you get into a car accident and you break a bunch of cells, the thing is if your potassium inside your blood goes above 6.5, it can cause an arrhythmia and kill you. But inside your cells, your concentration is easily above 100 and 130. So, in other words, in your cells, the concentration is high enough that any second you could drop dead because of an arrhythmia. So, the question is, how come we're not all dropping dead of an arrhythmia? And the answer is because of our kidneys and because our cells are constantly shifting. So, what this really means is if you're on medications that affect your electrolytes, it's absolutely critical that you monitor your electrolytes. And if you have kidney disease and your kidneys can't get rid of those electrolytes well, you always want to make sure that you're watching those electrolytes very, very carefully. Okay, let's keep going. So over the last 6 months, GFR has increased from 45 to 77 for Roman. That's exciting. And creatinine went down, all from going on a whole food plant-based diet. It's amazing as how you start to decrease the inflammation in your body. It makes such an amazing difference. In terms of other blood tests, urine tests, or imaging I could discuss with my nephrologist, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do in terms of functional studies to look for blood flow that you can do as far as trying to see if there's any obstruction going on. So there are functional flow studies that you can do. You can look at a CAT scan to see with contrast to see if there's any obstruction going on because the contrast can look at flow through the kidneys. But once again, the question becomes is what's the return on investment? As you know, contrast has contrast dye, which causes vasoconstriction. So everything goes from non-invasive to least risky to as you start to go more invasive and start to add contrast, the contrast itself can start to affect kidneys. So the question is the juice really worth the squeeze? So, what you want to talk to your kidney doctor if your creatinine is affected or elevated is if we do a study and you get a result, will that result change what you're doing now, or are you just going to give me information? And if all you're going to do is give me information, then do you really want to do this study to me? Okay, um, Van asked the question, what meds can I ask for a CKD3 non-diabetic? So Van, remember, when you're CKD3, and let's say you're a non-diabetic, remember that the big things for people with kidney disease is to make sure you're controlling blood pressure, you're controlling weight, and if you are a diabetic, you're controlling sugar. So blood pressure and weight would be the other two things to make sure you're controlling. That's the most important thing when it comes to the three biggest factors that affect the decline of kidney disease. Mao Mama asks, can CKD without diabetes have SGLT2 as well? The answer is absolutely yes. We do it all the time if they have protein in the urine. We use SGLT2s in patients who are non-diabetic. In fact, we use SGLT2s even when we're having patients who have heart disease who are non-diabetics, and we do that as well. Van, it sounds crazy. I went vegan and I'm doing water aerobics and swimming twice a week, dropped 20 pounds in 5 weeks. How incredible is that? Not only have you dropped 20 pounds, but what's amazing is this, the first 5 to 10% of body weight you lose has actually the greatest benefit on your overall longevity. So, Van, congratulations. Congratulations, because what you have done is absolutely incredible. This is really, really cool. Din asked the question, hi doc, can SGLT2 reduce protein in the urine? And the answer is absolutely yes. SGLT2 inhibitors are used specifically for reducing protein in the urine. In fact, in my patients, when I'm using the PRILs, the ACE inhibitors, or the ARBs like losartan, etc., irbesartan, or any of the other R10s, I'll add on the SGLT2s specifically to reduce the protein in the urine, even when they're not diabetic. Yes, does omega 3 reduce proteinuria? Well, so this is tricky, right? Because, back in the day with IgA and stuff, people used to think about omega 3s, but the dosing you need is so high that people get heartburn, they can't really tolerate it. So, the answer to that question is if you could tolerate that massive dose, go for it. But I'm not sure that it makes that big of a difference. I think we have such good treatments as far as reducing proteinuria goes that you should do omega 3 as far as brain health goes. Heart health, I'm not sure it's as beneficial as we once thought, but definitely for brain health, there's a lot of role that omega 3 plays. So I would definitely look there in terms of that. All right, let's come back to a couple more interesting studies that I want to share with you guys. There's a study that was published. This is in Cell 2023, and I thought I would talk to you guys about this because, we know that in CKD, chronic kidney disease, we know that people who are obese, and we know that even in dialysis, and we don't talk about transplant enough, but what's important to understand is that depression is a really big deal. And depression is one of those topics that's the silent killer of folks that nobody ever talks about. And I'll tell you in my practice what I have learned is men suffer in silence. My patients who are women will talk more about dialysis, I'm sorry, about depression. They'll be open about it. But my patients who are men, they don't feel comfortable. They don't feel open. They don't want to be vulnerable. It's like admitting defeat. And as a result of it, they don't feel like they can talk about it. And so there was an interesting study, and I thought I'd mention this. They did the study in mice, and what they found was that if you have once in a while, we talk about sleep being so darn important, but this was really fascinating, so I thought I'd mention it. But what it says is if once in a while you have mild sleep deprivation, what they showed was that just a little bit of mild sleep deprivation could actually lead to dopamine release. And what would happen is people would actually feel better just by having a little bit of sleep deprivation once in a while. Now, we all know that chronic sleep deprivation is terrible for you. It does so many bad things. It causes early death, worsening kidney disease, worsening heart disease, inflammation, diabetes, you name it, it does it. But this idea of this little bit of sleep deprivation once in a while was fascinating because what it would do is it's almost like a little bit of stress would cause your brain to essentially have a stress response, and that stress response would make the brain's plasticity become more flexible. It's almost like the concept of what happens if you're an athlete and we put you in an ice bath. People hate ice baths. So when they go into an ice bath and they come out, they actually recover faster and they can train harder the next day. But during that ice bath, it's a shock to the system. They hate it and they go into it briefly, they come back out and they're better. So as far as this goes, this little brief episode of sleep deprivation, what they found was it rewired the brain and the depression for the mice was actually improving. Now they're testing this in humans to see how long this effect lasts and what happens. But if you're thinking, oh, well, so, if I'm going through stuff, do I need to do that? Let me give you what I call the poor man's version of the sleep deprivation to improve depression. And that is when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is go for a walk. If you do a little bit of exercise in the morning, you will improve your mood for the entire day. So, one of the best things I've found for people who are suffering from any kind of depression is to exercise in the morning. Some of the research says that the best time to exercise turns out to be around 2 o'clock and so forth. But even though that's the case, it turns out that if you want to improve your mood, you want to change your entire life and outlook, exercise as soon as you wake up. And trust me on this, if you try this, you will be so surprised that you will come back and your entire life will be so much better. So fascinating. One more study before we come back to the questions. Now, this is a question. So, for those of you guys who don't know my background, back in the day, I used to be a trainer. And one of the things that I still see on YouTube all the time, and it drives me nuts, is people keep saying that I want to lose my belly fat. So I'm going to do all these sit ups and I'm going to do this specific type of training that's going to get rid of my belly fat. So let me give you another well-designed study. And this particular one is a systematic review and meta-analysis going on. And basically, they were looking at whether or not exercise induced localized fat reduction is true or not. And essentially, once again, what they found was, and this is published in 2022, very recent, what they found was that localized muscle training, so whether you're doing crunches like crazy or you're doing anything, has no effect on fat tissue deposits in that area. So spot reduction does not work. The way body fat stores occur in your body, unfortunately, is how your body is. It has nothing to do with the person next to you. You may be somebody who carries the extra fat in your hips or in your belly or somewhere else. And when you start to lose fat, you will lose it in the easier places first. So for those of you guys who've heard about Ozempic, you may have heard about Ozempic face, or you might have heard about Ozempic butt. And the reason people say that is because the fat in your face, especially around the eyes, it goes down really quickly. So people who go on these weight loss drugs will look like that they have aged very quickly, even though they still have a lot of weight to go because the rest of the weight is very stubborn. So the weight that goes away quicker goes away faster. So keep in mind that if you're trying to get healthier and lose weight, it's going to look a little bit worse before it looks better. So let it take time. Okay, let's come back to the questions. And it looks like there's a lot more questions. So, Mao Mama asked, what if proteinuria can't drop below 500 but stable even after using immunosuppressants over a year? The thing about all of this stuff is ideally you want it less than 500 milligrams, but if you can't, you still are aiming for less than 1,000 or less than 1 gram. That's your starting goal. So it's almost like you're already great if you're less than a gram, and now you're trying to be the perfect student to try to get less than 500. So don't feel bad if you can't get less than 500. If you can, that's awesome. But if you can't, don't feel bad. Still focus on the things you can control. For example, in addition to the immunosuppressants, how's your blood pressure? How's your weight? Because if you're doing immunosuppressants, maybe you got some prednisone, maybe you put on a little bit of weight. Is there other things that you can be doing to help that along? If sometimes, for example, some of my patients go on a whole food plant-based diet, they forget the portion of whole food and they're just doing a plant-based diet. And as you know, plant-based diets have become an ugly word simply because every fast food joint, when McDonald's and Jack in the Box and Burger King start saying they're like plant-based foods, we're in trouble. Din asked the question, in plant-based food, can fish be included? And the answer is Absolutely, yes, you can. And here's what I want you to understand. I am not a purist. I've never tried to be a purist. My job is to meet you where you're at. If you're somebody who eats meat every day and you come to me and I tell you to start moving towards my side and you're like, okay, I'll reduce meat to once or twice a week, I'll tell you this is wonderful news and I'll celebrate that with you because you made a change. There is way too much anger and hate in the world already. What we want to do is celebrate our successes, celebrate our joys. So if you're somebody who wants to eat fish, great. The data still says fish can be part of a healthy diet. Now, you want to remember that our oceans get polluted, there's microplastics, there's mercury, lead, etc., heavy metals that are going in fish. Yes, that's true. But overall, what the data still shows is fish can be healthy. Now, if you believe in the welfare of animals, if you believe in all of those things, and as a result of it, you don't want to eat fish, that's great. You shouldn't. So keep all of those things in mind, know where you stand, who you are, what you believe in, and that's perfectly okay. And my job is wherever you are in that journey, I want to be the person that can support you. I don't want to be the person who judges you. That's not my job. My job is to make you feel loved, to make you feel supported, and to make sure you don't feel judged. That's it. All right, Holly. Good evening, doctor. Good evening, Holly. Thank you so much for joining. Um, Let's see, D. Devon said on 80% whole food plant based diet. Excellent. How amazing is that? Urine pH is 6.5 to 7. That's wonderful too. And listen, if you're asking the question, is it alkaline enough? You're doing an amazing job. You should be very, very proud of yourself. This is awesome because just the fact that you're doing that, you're not just doing an 80% whole food plant based diet, you're better than 98% of the people out there. And that in itself is pretty darn cool. And Holly, you're not late, you're early for next month. How's that? And Teresa asked the question, Teresa Graham, what do the difference between kidney disease and kidney injury? Kidney disease is just a way of saying it's more chronic. Kidney injury refers to the idea that it could be more acute. It's just semantics. There isn't much. We used to say chronic kidney disease, chronic kidney injury. The words can be interchanged by some. I wouldn't let it bother you too much. The idea, once again, is what you want to be able to know is that if you have either the word disease or injury, what you want to know is there's always hope. There's all sorts of stuff that's happening. Right now they're looking at transplants. Xenotransplantation is the latest thing that's happening, which is pig transplants. And they've already been able to do transplants for as much as 30 days. And so there's a whole new field that's emerging. They're looking at artificial transplants with the artificial kidney. So, in terms of the way this whole field is going, even in the next 10 years, medicine as we know it is going to get absolutely, absolutely revolutionary. So, if you're somebody who's on dialysis, all I want you to know is one, hold on, hold on. There's hope. Don't give up. Don't think about give up. If you're thinking about giving up, realize there's hope. And I know you're suffering. Dialysis sucks. There is no other way to put it. There is nobody who understands how difficult dialysis is when you got somebody taking two 16 gauge needles and putting it in your arm 3 times a week, 4 times a week, and you have to lay there. And when we tell patients, it's like running a marathon 3 to 4 times a week. Nobody understands what's that like. Most of us have never run a marathon, and the ones that have, it's like once a year they do that. For our patients, they're running a marathon 3 to 4 times a week, every single week. So keep that in mind. Hi, doc. Do you recommend stem cell therapy for IgA nephropathy? Stem cell therapy just hasn't come far enough for us to be able to give you enough hope. Holly asks, what causes low heart rate? Holly, there's a number of things. For example, if the heart is very weak, that in itself can cause low heart rate. There can be electrical conductivity issues. There's medications like beta blockers. So this could be intentionally caused by medications that can cause heart rate. So in other words, there's electrical conductivity issues that can cause heart rate stuff going on. And by the way, I'll say one thing, and this is my running joke because I have two lovely daughters. Um, one is Faith, one is Celine. Faith is my older daughter, Celine is my younger daughter. I always point to the heart here, and that's just because I have daughters, so the heart's always on this side. Your heart is in the middle. My heart, because I have daughters, my heart's always on this side. So that's the only reason I point on this side. Um, Let's see. Mao asks, how much daily intake of oil, EPA and DHA, respectively, is actually effective to slow down CKD? So now, if you look at the data in terms of fish oil, this was only studied in IgA, but it's fish oil by itself, it doesn't do so much. What you're referring to, for example, when you talk about fish oils, is the role of EPA and DHA. This is a tricky topic because we just don't have enough data to be able to guide you. So let me do a whole video on this one because I want to be able to give you all of the studies, the pros and the cons, and rather than just kind of say, no, not really, it doesn't work, I'll do a video and I'll present to you, all of you guys, the studies so you can kind of hear both sides of the argument and make that decision for yourself. So hold that thought and I'll bring it back to you. Is MPGN hard to treat compared to other types of GN? Well, it depends. So MPGN has a bunch of subtypes. I have a couple of videos on the channel and I'll do another one for you as well. It's not that it's hard to treat. It depends on the subtype. And depending on the subtype, that's how we treat it. But like everything else, it really depends on how much scarring there is. And based on the scarring, that's how we determine, can we treat it well or not. Byzantine asks, if a person wanted to make a change to a diet, maybe to a whole food plant-based diet, how long does it take to positively impact health and kidney health? What is ideal kidney diet and exercise? How long to see benefits? So here's what's fascinating about our bodies is, as soon as we start to change, our guts, yes, they do take weeks, meaning at least a few weeks. Now, what's a few weeks? Is it a month? Is it 6 months? It depends on the person. But here's the thing. When you start to change, when we see patients, so in my case, I do nephrology and I do obesity medicine. And I can tell you, when I start to have my patients start to follow the diet, the first couple of weeks, they always feel like they don't feel well. It's like a withdrawal of sort. But after the first couple of weeks, almost 95%, and I have treated probably over 10,000 patients, but almost 95% of them come back and say, Doc, I hated the first couple of weeks, but then little by little, I started to have more energy. So anecdotally, I would tell you after the first couple of weeks, people start to feel better. And that's what I would say is slow and steady feels the best. And after the first couple of weeks, you will start to see changes. But you got to know that when you start to make a change, it's a funny thing. When you start to cut out sugar, after 7 days, just 7 days, your taste buds start to change. That's how quickly you start to see results, where all of a sudden, regular strawberries will start to taste sweeter. And how beautiful is that? So, if you're starting on your diet and you're wondering how long, in as little as 1 to 2 weeks, changes will start happening for you. All right, my husband's last number, 24-hour urine protein, was 2.6. That means it's 2.6 grams of protein that he's spilling in 24 hours. So that means we have an opportunity. And what that means is do we need to talk about things like ACEs, ARBs, aldosterone antagonists, SGLT2 inhibitors? Do they need other things like immunosuppressives or prednisone or steroids, for example, depending on the type of underlying disease it is? Have they had a biopsy? Is it because it's just from diabetes? Do they need very tight glucose control? Do they have extra weight? And we have an opportunity to bring their weight down. So now what I would say is you have to talk to your nephrologist and see where do the opportunities lie. So some of my patients, for example, if they have some extra weight, will use a combination of SGLT2 and a GLP-1 like Ozempic. We'll bring those together and we'll use it together safely, and we can see amazing results. But the goal is you want to work with your nephrologist, especially one who's up to date on the latest medications, because when I started in this field 15 years ago, I felt like there was so little tools in my tool belt, and now I feel like every few months there's a new tool that's added, and I really have to keep up with the literature to stay on top of all of the latest and greatest things that keep happening all the time. And that's a blessing, because I finally feel like I'm not just seeing my patients and waiting for them to get on dialysis. Instead, I feel like I'm giving them hope. And hope, I tell you, hope is beautiful. It's one of the greatest things you can do for a patient. I don't know if I've shared with you guys on this channel this story, but I put this on my Instagram channel. It's Sean Hashmi MD, and this was a video that I reposted, and it's an experiment. There was a researcher, right? And so there are these mice, and they're feeding them like this really bad food, and it's basically poison, right? So they're expecting these mice to die, and so in one group of mice, these mice, they're not dying, and they keep wondering why the heck these mice are not dying. And so it turns out that the researcher, and most of these researchers, as you know, they're like grad students. They come in the middle of the night and they have to feed these mice and stuff like that. So basically they're giving these mice essentially this really bad food. It's basically poison. But when this researcher comes and he takes these mice out of the cages, what this researcher would do is he would take the mice out of the cages and he would very gently pet them. He would very gently pet them. And as he would pet them, then he would feed them this poison. And just the simple act of a little bit of love, a little bit of kindness, is all it took to undo the damage of the poison that he was giving them. I want you to just think about that statement that I just said. We are so stuck, we're so convinced of a pill. But part of the pill to work is if the doctor tells you what you're taking is going to work great for you, what you're taking is going to make you better, you have hope. This is going to do good. I believe in you. You've done great. You see, those statements make all the difference. And if people give you hope, if you have hope, everything is possible. And that's what I want you to understand with all of this stuff is, so when you see that your numbers aren't as great and you got 2.6 grams, find a nephrologist, find a dietitian, find people who aren't just smart, who aren't just on YouTube, and just because they're on YouTube you think they know everything. That doesn't make them a good doctor. Find people who genuinely care and you feel like they're part of your team and they make you want to be better, and you feel like they care about you as a person. And if you do that, that will make all the difference for you. All right, let's look at the next question. Oh, it's CJ. Oh, hey, CJ. I miss you too, my friend. CJ and I, we go way back, and it's been a long time since I've seen him. He's a very, very humble and kind person. Holly, my husband has stage 4. We went on a plant-based diet. After 3 months, it went from 15 to 18 and now to 21. Holly, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And 1 is the number, but 2 is the journey that you guys went on together. I'm sure the act of going on that journey together brought both of you together. And then that's amazing that you have 2 beautiful daughters. In fact, on one of these live episodes, I'm going to bring both of my daughters together because I'm trying to also inspire them to see that the act of kindness and the act of giving back is the greatest thing that you can ever do. And I hope that they grow up to become somebody that inspires people and learns that the act of giving is far greater than the act of receiving. So, yes, I think being a daughter dad is the coolest thing ever, ever. Um, Next question. Let's see. Hi, doc. I'm currently on dialysis and my weight is 39 kilograms. GFR is around 30. Can I use SGLT2? So, the thing about SGLT2s is we try not to use SGLT2s in patients who are on dialysis. We try not to use them if their GFR is lower. If you look at the manufacturer's guidelines, they don't use them in GFRs less than 30. In our clinical practice, we don't use them in GFRs less than 20. But SGLT2s aren't magical. So don't feel like if you can't use an SGLT2, you're missing out on something. There's nothing wrong if you are not doing an SGLT2. In other words, never fall into this trap that there's some magical drug that just because you're not getting, that somehow, it's changing everything and you're in a bad place. Don't feel like that. Shout out for Doctor. You're amazing. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you. Thank you, Mao Mama. All right. And yes, I will definitely do a video, guys, on um, the MPGN definitely for you guys. So you'll absolutely have that. So don't worry about that. And then let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other questions. Okay, so before we go on to uh, Holly asked the question, Doctor, can stage 2 and 3 show up? Holly, I'm not sure I understand your question. Are you saying can stage 2 and 3 show up, meaning can they slow down? Or um, if your question is there, if you want to go ahead and just repeat it so I can see it, that would be great. And while you're going ahead and doing that, let me go ahead and share one more study with you guys. This is a brand new study, just came out in Nutrients 2023. It's important for you guys to remember we talk about foods all the time. I just want to make a shameless plug here because the strawberry industry is paying me with strawberries. I'm totally joking. They're not paying me with anything. But there's a really interesting study. It talks about strawberry. They had the same authors that talked about blueberries in the past, but essentially blueberries and strawberries, they have anthocyanins, and what they've shown is that anthocyanins are linked to lowering the risk of dementia. Now they've also shown that strawberries in particular, not only because of anthocyanins, but also because they have ellagic acid and they have a bunch of other things that can help to reduce the risk of dementia even more so than blueberries. So it's really helpful to see that strawberries, even more so than blueberries, can reduce the risk of dementia. So remember, as you guys are looking at your overall health and your overall life, and you're thinking about what is the most important thing that you need to worry about, more so than kidney disease, more so than heart disease, more so than obesity, remember the most important thing that you want to think about is actually brain health. So it turns out that modern medicine, the way that it's working is we're finding treatment for kidney failure. We're finding treatment for heart failure, for heart attacks. We can put stents in people. We can put stents in kidneys. We might have artificial kidneys and all sorts of stuff. But what we don't have treatments for is losing your mind. So remember, even though I'm a kidney specialist, I'm an obesity specialist, I'm a lifestyle medicine specialist, more so than all of those things, the most important thing you got to worry about is your brain. Because the last thing you want is the odds for everybody on this call is if you're around 60 years old or younger right now, the odds are you are going to make it to 100 years old. Mark my words. I don't care what anybody says. Mark my words. I'm willing to bet $1 million on this because of the way technology is going. My fear is that even though the odds are you're going to live to be 100, the problem with that statement is the majority of people that live to be 100, they might be bedridden, they might have dementia, they might have so many of these chronic conditions. And as a result of that, the danger, the fear is that even though you live to be 100, you don't get to enjoy your 90s. You might not even get to enjoy your 80s. And modern medicine will keep you alive, but what's the point of living if all that's happening is you're bedridden? So, once again, brain health is critical. So, this is a brand new study, Nutrients 2023, Krikorian and colleagues just published. Very important to understand that this new data once again supports strawberries. And Byzantine, I love the fact that you were able to put those graphics of strawberries. I don't know how you guys find those graphics so quickly, but you guys are awesome. All right, so let's go back. So, Holly, I see you cleared the question that you asked earlier, which was, can stage 2, 3 kidney disease show up in a test like how stage 4 shows up? Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So, if you have stage 2, stage 3, it will show up simply because of the fact that you're checking a creatinine. But remember, stage 2, by definition, has to have protein in the urine, right? There's a sign of actual kidney damage, and that's how it will show up. Let's see, D. Dutton talked about consuming over 2 pounds of 10 or more low starch veggies. Okay, let's keep going. Van said, congratulations to all of you here. Your wins help the rest of us keep going. You know, this is what it's about. If you notice the nonprofit that I run called Self Principle, I came up with Self Principle because I was looking at the longest living people on the planet. And as I was doing the research, I was looking at the blue zones. And what I found was this concept of self was sleep, exercise, love, food. And that's it. That's literally it. And I kept looking at all of the other things out there, but what I kept coming back to was these guys slept more, these guys moved more, and this sense of purpose, this sense of community was so important. That love is so darn important. So Van, I got to tell you, I mean, this whole concept of self, the most beautiful thing about all of us that are on this little YouTube live thing today is we are together on a common purpose that unites us, which is we are bonded by the idea that we care about each other. And every one of you guys that I've had a chance to meet in real life, whether it's a conference or any other event, what I can tell you, all of you have the biggest hearts. And I know that some of you are suffering and you're going through the most crazy things, and you all have stories. You know my story. I didn't come to this thing because it was all rosy and everything was easy. I went through a lot of difficult times, but my story is nothing compared to your stories. And I can tell you what unites us is the fact that our hearts are way bigger than anything else. And that's what's so cool. So if we can inspire each other by our stories, and if we can be kind, how cool is that? That's just the idea, right? And what I know about people who are trying to lose weight, the most successful people who lose weight and keep it off is because they build a community. If you build a community, if you build a bond with each other, and if this group of ours can build a bond with each other, that is powerful. And that's why this is so cool. So yes, I love that. So very great comment, Ben. Thank you so much for saying that. Roman says, Dr. Hashmi, thank you for giving your time like this. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. This is my pleasure to be able to share this. Teresa asks, does teas and apple cider vinegar with the mother affect the kidneys negatively? So tea is awesome. Teas in general are awesome. Just keep that in mind. Coffee and tea is some of the best stuff on the planet. And as you think about coffee, it has nothing to do with the caffeine. So if you like decaf, have decaf. If you like caffeinated, have caffeinated. 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day is the sweet spot. Remember, if you're into Coffee Bean or Starbucks, whatever it is, their small coffee that's 8 ounce is actually 2 cups. So in Starbucks language, a tall coffee is considered 2 cups already. So 2 to 3 cups a day is considered to be the sweet spot when it comes to coffee. It has nothing to do with the caffeine. So don't think about the caffeine, caffeinated or decaf. Doesn't matter what type of coffee it is. It could be, you know, go to Costco and get the Costco brand or Folgers. I grew up on Folgers, which I think it just tastes as good as any of the really expensive coffee, but coffee is really good. Tea, I grew up on Lipton. I was actually born in Pakistan. Um, Pakistan, we have Lipton tea is like the traditional tea everybody drinks, but Lipton doesn't matter. Whatever tea you like, green tea, I don't care. Tea in general is awesome. So tea is awesome, coffee is awesome, caffeinated or decaffeinated does not matter. Apple cider vinegar just doesn't have any data behind it. It has so much hype. I don't know how it got so much hype, but I have yet to see a well designed study to show that it's actually really good. So I'm so sorry. I keep waiting for the data. The day I have good data behind it, I'll come out and say it's the best thing ever, but I'm just waiting for the studies. As soon as I have the studies, I'll tell you their study to say it is awesome. Right now, I just don't have the studies. That's all. Let's see. How many portion of plant-based proteins can stage 4 should consume in a day? So, if you watch like Michelle and I, Michelle actually goes through all of these things in detail. The data shows that overall about zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. 0.6 grams to zero point 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. In terms of the types of protein, plant-based proteins are always preferred over animal-based protein. As you know, I've presented the data on soy. Soy is very good. Don't worry about all the scary stuff people are talking about soy. There's just isn't a lot of truth behind it. Once again, you want to be evidence-based. Evidence-based. You want to do your own research, look at the data yourself, decide for yourself what you want to end up doing. Um, Holly, absolutely. My plan, Holly, is I'm actually going to put a self conference together. So we're going to have an actual self conference where we're going to put it together, have all sorts of speakers, and as we build the channel up and everything starts to get together, I just spent so much time just focusing on work and everything. This is my passion, so I'm really trying to come back and do this. Roman, it is ideal body weight. Ideal body weight is correct. It is not the actual body weight. It is ideal body weight. Let's see. I think it's CK Jamon asked the question. Doctor, stage 3 with liver disease, GFR 40, BUN 36, creatinine of 2.1. Doctor has tried losartan and amlodipine. When I take these, I've had creatinine level. So remember when you guys take losartan, which is an ARB, or lisinopril, which is an ACE inhibitor, when you start these, the creatinine is going to elevate, and it can elevate by as much as 30%. In fact, it's supposed to elevate. That's how you know the drug is working. So keep that in mind, is when you do this, your creatinine will elevate, but if it elevates more than 30%, then you should be concerned that either the dosage is high or you're worried about renal artery stenosis, that there's a blockage or something like that going on. So by definition, starting an ACE inhibitor, lisinopril, enalapril, ARB, losartan, irbesartan, candesartan, any one of those drugs, the creatinine will elevate a little bit. That's completely normal. But that's why whenever we start one of those agents or we change the dosage, we always check a blood test 1 to 2 weeks after starting. And that's why when you start it, your doctor will always want to check it. And that's why you want to follow up with your nephrologist right after you've started so they can repeat the blood test. And Holly asked, Doctor, is coffee good to drink when you have high blood pressure? So the answer is you can have tea, you can have decaf coffee. The role of caffeine and blood pressure matters, but in terms of coffee itself and blood pressure, it doesn't have to be caffeinated, number one. Number two is, remember, coffee by itself is not miraculous. So don't feel like if you're not drinking coffee, that it makes you a bad person. I did one video on coffee, and somehow people felt like if they didn't drink coffee, they were missing out, or that somehow I was sponsored by the coffee industry. I wish I was sponsored by the coffee industry. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but what you want to know is if you like coffee, have some. If you got high blood pressure and you drink caffeinated coffee, it goes up, don't drink it. If you can't give up coffee and you want to have coffee, drink some decaf. But at the end of the day, it's all about what are the things you can do that can balance this stuff. Okay. All right. So time is 6 o'clock. Let me take one or two last questions, and then we can go ahead and save the rest of it for next time. So let's see. Let's see. All right. Last question was, does warfarin affect kidney labs significantly? No, the answer is no. Warfarin will not affect kidney labs significantly. So let me close off today's session by number one saying, listen, at the end of the day, guys, this information is just for you guys to have, number one. Number two, I'm hoping that you can use this information to better yourself. If there's stuff that I say that offends you, that bothers you in any way, that's not my intention. My intention is that if I can be of service to you, that's all I hope to do. My story is I grew up in a very humble beginning, in a very poor background. I wish I had a role model. I wish I had mentors. I wish I had anybody who was there to guide me through my troubles and to make me believe that there was hope, and hope is beautiful. So if I give you hope, that's all I ever wish to do in this world. And like I said, I'm a father, and to me, being a good role model for my daughters is the most important thing. And I hope that for those of you guys who have the privilege to be parents, you just want to make sure that you make this world just a little bit better for your kids, so that as they grow up, they have the opportunities that you didn't have. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of your lives this evening. I wish you a beautiful weekend, a beautiful year, and I hope to see you guys next month in December. And with that, I wish you a good night. Bye, everyone.